shortly. We're expecting her. So the first thing we're going to do is announce that we're going to be meeting again on December 27th, which is the Thursday. The next item is not going to be approval of the minutes because Mrs. Innes has volunteered to solve the Mali problem. So we will await her being here. So it's citizen speak. Now at citizen speak, citizens who have items which they consider relevant to the planning board's mission or business are entitled to address the board and bring the board up to speed with their comments. So, what citizens, how many citizens want to speak tonight? We have a citizen. Why don't you come up and identify yourself? I should announce before you get too far that we are recording this meeting. And not only are we recording it, but we're televising it live. So welcome.
Only live.
Visiting that landscape, 130 Elliott Street. I did not attend the meeting for the October 17th, but I'm talking this law to Mr. Clark, who did present it to you. And I was not here for the November 1st issue of the Milton Times, and I have some real concerns about the interpretation of this law. So I would like to revisit it with you and point out that contrary to what this headline says in the Milton Times, planners invite developer to reopen discussion. Under this law, Chapter 48, Section 16, it is my interpretation that you don't have that right. So I've underlined certain key words in the statute, and I will respectfully request any contrary opinions you might have, but this appears to be black and white. So this refers to Section 16, refers to the final unfavorable decisions by permit granting authorities. And so it goes on to say, no appeal, application, or petition, and you had a petition and an application before you for a special permit, which has been unfavorably and finally acted upon by a special permit granting or permit granting authority, which is this board, shall be acted favorably upon within 2 years. So it says, no petition shall be acted favorably upon within 2 years unless said special permit granting authority finds by a unanimous vote of the board of 3 members, which is not you, by a vote of 4 members, which is you, when there's 5 members on the board, unless you find specific and material changes in the conditions upon which the previous unfavorable action was based. And you also have to describe such changes in the record of the proceedings, and you have to give notice to all parties. So this does not mean you can have all the discussions in the world, but you cannot consider that application that was presented, that we suffered through for 2 years, unless there is a material and specific change in the application. And he didn't even move, the Conley group did not move off the original application.
But you have to remember that when we denied the plan,
I'm sorry.
when we denied the plan, we cited a number of zoning non-compliances.
Right.
And if they come in with a plan and the non-compliances have been changed into compliances, then, I mean, it doesn't make any sense for them to come in with the same plan because the non-compliances would require the same vote. And we would simply say there's no point in reconsidering it. But if they fix all the non-compliances that we cite, then that would be a material change in the plan. And we could consider it. But they have to fix the non-compliances.
All right, that was not stated here,
Oh.
and I think that people think that you can just come back and say, well, let's talk some more.
No, he can't come back with the same plan because that would be a waste of our time and his time. And your time.
You said it. Now, one of the issues, and I fault myself for this, is that I was very disappointed, to say the least, that the town allowed the parking lot at 36 Central Avenue to be sold to a developer and use the funds that would have paid for that, for that lot, or even, it's my understanding, I haven't fully researched it yet, that maybe the town didn't even have to pay for that lot. Nevertheless, the excuse was given when the town came up with the money to buy 131 Elliott, the MBTA portion. It was with the understanding, or at least it was my understanding, after my disappointment of seeing the parking lot gone now at 36 Central, it was my understanding that the reason why the town purchased that piece of property was so that it could have a say in what was going to be developed there. Now, to have a say, I didn't really hear the say other than you were requesting that the Conleys come up with the same zoning rules that were in the zoning bylaws that applied to the planned unit development, that also applied to 36 Central. Which didn't have any requirement for the town to have a say. So where is the town going to have a say in its property, 131 Elliott, that it bought with the idea of having a say? And does this not require further zoning change?
Well, I can give you my view, even though citizen speak is not usually a question and answer period, but the say of the town is that there has to be an approved special permit before the town is going to deliver its property. And then the property has to be developed pursuant to the special permit. Without the town having the land in question, it seems quite possible that a 40B development would be proposed because that it seems like that could easily happen. So there is, in fact, the town does in fact have a say, and it's through your elected planning board members and your participation in public hearings. And finally, I don't know of any changes that are required in the zoning right now. I know that he wants to have less business area, and that at one point he suggested that if the business area was reduced, he'd be prepared to put in a public park of significant size, but that was just talk, and didn't get far enough to be something we could put in the zoning. But I mean, it would be certainly worth considering if the developer had particular issues. And we've made it very clear that we are happy to consider zoning changes for 131 Elliott Street, but we need we're not going to dream them up ourselves. I mean, we have a developer. If the developer thinks that there are changes that he needs, he should tell us about it.
But it's not a question, and you don't have to respond to me, Mr. Chairman. I'm just raising these issues and raising these questions for you to possibly think about. But one of the issues that I talked with him about was putting a different exterior on the building, having a brick front similar to what was at 36 Central to tie the whole area in. And he told me he was never going to do anything with brick. Now, you know, those are the kinds of things that the town ought to have say in on its own property. I'm just bringing this up because of what I thought was a misleading headline in this paper, and also because what I observed from the comfort of my living room going on a town meeting where town meeting members and some former elected officials thought it would be great for us to come back and negotiate, even though you at the planning board, and I don't think you stood up for yourself at that town meeting to say that for 2 years you had considered those plans.
Well, we're happy if he comes back with some material changes that meet the problems in the last plan to get to work again.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I would ask your forbearance because I see that 383 to 385 Brushell Road is on the agenda as a public hearing. It was not when it was before this board in September, October of 2010. I wonder if you just allow me the special permission to not have to wait for that, but just to make a statement that I think you ought to consider when you have further discussion about the bus stop.
Okay.
All right, thank you. You will recall that in September, October of 2010, as I said, that estate was on the agenda for the planning board, as was 36 Central, and people for 36 Central were put out in the hall because there wasn't enough room for everybody. And then you did change the meeting, I thank you for that, so that you're down here in a much larger room. I pointed out at the time that my sister was there in my place because I couldn't attend the meeting, and that she had been a friend of one of the Boyle girls, and my younger sister had been a friend of one of the other Boyle girls, 9 children in the family. What I didn't say was among the 9 children was a little boy, Eddie. Eddie was 6 years old, and Eddie decided to go down that driveway you've all been talking about in his sled. And I don't think I need to tell you what happened next. He and the sled went out onto Brushell Road, and he was killed. So I bring that up because I hear them discussing a bus stop, and I heard some of the neighbors saying, well, should it be gravel? We don't like it there, we don't want it. But then I heard gravel, I heard all kinds of other stuff, and I'm thinking that the bus stop shouldn't be there anyway. The bus should go up the hill, pick up the kids, and take them to school. Now, I don't think you have that authority. I do know they do that in other towns. I know they do it down at Sagamore Beach because that's where my niece sends her children, and they go up the street rather than pick them up on that main road. The reason why I say that is because, as you know, Brushell Road is it's a scenic road, but it's very windy and very dangerous. And I can just envision that on a slippery road with those children waiting for the bus right there in that road practically, that somebody's going to come down, going to slip on the ice or slip on the rain and plow into those kids. So I ask you to think about that when you're having a discussion about the bus stop, the school bus stop. I commend the developer for coming up with the idea. It's just, I think, something should be, safety should be paramount concern here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now, the minutes of let me see. The minutes that you suggested that you were going to employ the wisdom of Solomon in coming up with
Driving the child into.
right,
I
exactly.
completely forgot I was supposed to employ the wisdom of Solomon.
And-
Until I was flipping through them tonight, I said, yes.
You recall that. Now-
I recalled it, yes, late.
Now, it seems to me that we have two recollections, but what we are going to need in the next, actually on December 27th, someone's going to have to write a decision for that decision that was made orally to be filed with the town clerk. And I think we have 180 days, is that right, Bill? From what, close?
Wait till the 27th, that's that time.
Okay, so there has to be a written decision when?
I wrote the decision, and I expected to have it signed tonight, but we have a virus in our system, and I cannot open files.
It is 180 days, isn't it? From the,
Yes, 108 days from the start to.
no, from the conclusion of the hearing.
Not in the conclusion of the hearing.
What is the statute? Section 9, 48-9. Everyone should always bring their book with them. Action within 90 days after hearing, deemed granted. Special permit granting authority shall act within 90 days following a public hearing, for which notice has been given by publication or posting, as provided in section 11. This is, this is special permits for adult uses. So I guess we better
Find a different one. I
find a
would say.
different one.
I'm pretty sure that one was simply about
Special permit, section 9. Well, the decision of the special permit granting authority shall be made within 90 days following the date of such public hearing. The required time limits for a public hearing and said action may be extended by written agreement between the petitioner and the special permit granting authority. So it's 90 days from the close of the hearing, is that right? Do we think that? Okay, and when did we close the hearing?
October 18th.
That's Thursday, October. Yeah, that's when we.
November, December, so
Should take us
it would
into
seem that
January.
it was January. January would seem to be 90 days, wouldn't it?
December, January. Yep.
Okay, so we're happy with that, each application is 90 days following the date of such public hearing?
What is this?
Yep, it's right here. You're on 9-3?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we think we've got time, Bill, so,
I have it all done.
okay.
The two parties that are going to sign have already seen it,
What's two parties?
Mr. Lynch and
Oh,
Mr. Kelly. You can't do it. Emily and Ed voted for it.
But we can't do it.
Ed, I thought voted against it.
You see it?
No,
No,
it was
it's
2 to
not.
2.
Oh, did you vote against it,
Mr.
Mike?
Kelly and
Yes.
Mr. Lynch.
You voted for it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So then, the decision would basically set out what
It's a denial decision.
Mike's reasons and what Bernie's reasons are, and the minutes could attach the decision as reflecting,
It states it in the decision
the
itself.
reasoning.
It's in the decision.
Reasonings in the decision.
Okay, but people have to see the decision to see if they agree
I
with
sent it
it.
to you twice by email. Mike sent it back right away. So I know it's going out to the same,
What email do you have from me?
something, the one that.
Inspect the house?
Inspect whatever.
Yeah, but it was blynch@inspecthouse.com. It was changed to b.lynch@inspecthouse.com. And if you got it
Did
from
you
the
get any of the stuff that we've been sending out in the last week?
I get a lot of email from you, yeah.
Then it's the same one.
Well, I didn't get
haven't
it.
changed.
I know the selectmen have it be Lynch.
I don't use theirs, I have.
All right, now,
Well, just, okay.
So you're saying you would like this by the 27th?
I would say that if we have a decision signed by the people who decided, setting forth what their reasoning was, then the minutes can simply attach the decision.
There you go.
And we can go from there. So
Give a copy.
once,
I don't have a copy.
once you get that thing, send me a copy too also, so I can take a look at it. Make sure that you at least have all the necessary ingredients.
Are you sure you wanna do that?
Yeah. This
Even
is,
though you're
I'm not going to do anything
And it's going to-
substantive.
all right,
It's
even though
purely,
it's going
proc-
to be appealed, you don't
purely
wanna do that.
procedural,
Okay.
purely procedural. I mean, if, in fact, I feel
All I
that,
can do is say it.
if I feel that there is stuff that needs to be done, I'll refer it to the next meeting. But I certainly won't suggest any changes. I wouldn't do that. That would be wrong.
Yes.
All right, okay? So we'll do the minutes on the 27th for sure,
All of the minutes or just that set?
all the minutes. Because we're now going to hear from Ned, who has to leave in 7 minutes, and if we did the other minutes, Ned would probably already have left.
Good evening.
Hello.
Ned Corcoran, attorney on behalf of the Sullivan family, hopefully for the last time as part of the public hearing for the joint applications of 50 Elliott Street LLC and Milton Hill Realty Trust for the redevelopment of the property on Elliott Street. I do appreciate the board's indulgence. My daughter is performing in the high school holiday concert this evening, and she has a solo, which is her first ever.
What time does the solo start?
Well, the concert starts at 7, and they're in the second performance. So there's a performance of 2 or 3 songs, and they switch, and then there's another 2 or 3.
Do you have a recording device with you?
I'm bringing it when I come back. I'll play it for everybody.
There you go.
But she's singing that.
I don't know. It's all a surprise. So what I would like to suggest is that I think we're done. I proposed to the board a semi-final set of conditions to development. Included in that is a commitment to 3 affordable units. Mr. Duffy specifically asked, and there's been some questions around whether we would commit affordable units and be available for households in low to moderate income up to 80% of the median area income, and we're committed to 2 in the existing Hill House, which we can convert quickly, and 1 in the Henry House. And Donnie Garrity, who's the project architect, is here this evening. He has some material with the boards with some colors to walk through with the board. And we are prepared to, I have had conversations with Bill and with Joe Lynch, the town engineer. We have agreed on a stormwater management plan that will have us tie into the town's stormwater system at, I think their manhole is at the bottom of Morton Road. And the plan is to run a pipe down the sidewalk of Elliott Street and tie into the town system. And we know that there's some coordination efforts that are necessary with the town in terms of how that specifically happens. The town has just received notice of a grant, a Mass Works grant, which will really coordinate with some of the work that we're proposing to do and agreeing to do. We've agreed to replace the sidewalk, to mirror the sidewalk treatments that are on down at Central Avenue. The grant will provide for that as well. On the area of Elliott Street that is not in front of our property, the grant will provide utility work, including stormwater management for the area, which needs to be coordinated, and we would propose that we would either work side by side or even take the lead in certain elements, including the filing with the Conservation Commission for the notice of intent and order of conditions for the combined work in terms of stormwater management. That would be a significant effort on behalf of both. I think that I understand that Joe Lynch and John Thompson have been sort of preliminarily charged with writing a scope of work and budget for the town's portion of the work. We will share our information with them so we get a combined budget and so that we can allocate resources between the town and the Sullivans on the most efficient way to design a combination of improvements and to construct it. And we're happy to drive that bus if we can help advance it more quickly than the town is under its processes. But we look forward to meeting with Joe Lynch and John Thompson soon to engage that process. So with that, I just want to say that I really appreciate on behalf of the Sullivans the level of attention and effort and detail that has been provided to this project by multiple boards, by neighborhood groups over long periods of time. I think what started out as a concept that was difficult by some to understand, but we thought a pretty exciting opportunity to change the face of Elliott Street. It's been massaged into a project that I'm pretty proud to call one of my next door neighbors, and I really appreciate the goodwill and the efforts by this board and others in terms of arriving at what I think is a pretty good project. And so I would propose to leave. My team is here. They are available to continue discussions. I'm happy to leave if there's an issue or concern that arises that needs my attention. I would just ask the board to hold until I return to finalize discussions. If there are no issues, I would ask the board to go ahead and vote to close the hearing, to vote to approve site plan approval, or to grant site plan approval subject to review of the final form of that decision and the plans.
You've submitted a draft decision, I
I
assume?
have not submitted a draft decision, I
Oh.
submitted a draft conditions.
Okay, well, you can
I'm
submit a
happy.
draft decision also, just because it's easier to work from a draft than from
I'll submit
the
that.
ether. And, yeah, we'll talk with the, your team about colors and materials and so we'll make sure that they don't feel that their day at the Milton Planning Board has been entirely wasted.
Appreciate that.
But
And
we
I will-
want to hear about the concert.
And I will, absolutely.
You should
That
stay,
should be
you know,
telling.
there may be, what do they do when they call the
Encores.
performers encores?
Maybe I'll bring her with me as we go. Put it down.
Ned is also due to be on for a different public hearing at 7:15. Can we
Right.
postpone that
We're
till?
we're going to discuss the affordable housing plan
Okay, so can we take that 7:15 and make it
What-
later?
later.
30-ish?
Is it
When you get back.
that's the Brush Hill Road one thing,
Yes.
right? Is that a hearing?
That is, yes, the
Yep.
close. we can
Yeah, at
close it.
7:15, we'll continue it until Ned gets back.
Thank you.
And I will prepare a draft of a decision and have it in good shape so that hopefully the board is ready to approve it.
You
Meeting
have
on
it
the
and
27th.
submit it
I'll submit it and
to
for the approval on
Mr.
the
Clark, and he
27th.
will give it his once over, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you.
And see you later.
Thank you very much.
Okay, architectural team, why don't you come up and tell us about the colors and how the renderings that you've given us are not entirely accurate. As far as colors are concerned. Ah. Sort of like the Mojave Desert. Very muted.
Exactly, that was the intent. My name is Donnie Gary from the architectural team. Thank you for seeing us again. I guess the intent behind the colors from the beginning was to have an earth tone, muted, not as bold, not as bold as to pronounce itself in the neighborhood. And we went through several iterations of color with John Z's group, and I believe maybe a preliminary meeting with you guys. We went through a couple different color options, but it seemed like the consensus was to keep it with beige earth tones, something that's not going to strike itself from the neighborhood. We tried a yellow to match up with the Henry House, but wasn't as successful as people thought it would be in terms of connecting itself to the neighborhood. It was more bold than
And yellow is a
everyone
tough
wanted.
color on one
It
of
is.
these prepackaged deals.
It is. So, starting with the materials, masonry for a base. We've come up with a couple different options for that, but again, what we're looking for is something more earth tone than more of a lipstick red for the masonry. Material palette's going to be fiber cement, lap siding, panel board, and trim boards. For the trim boards, they come in nominal thicknesses, so those details become worked out as we move forward. But in terms of some locations where the wetness would occur, like near the balconies, along the roof, we switch over to an AZEC trim or PVC, something similar for those areas. But everything would be a factory primed finish on those materials, and then field painted, so everything would be cohesive. We wouldn't want to do any prefabricated factory finished materials, just to get a better finish for construction, and don't limit ourselves from their palette. We can come up with our own scheme. So what I've had here are these are the four latest color options that we had looked at a couple of months prior, but the latest ones that we've been showing in all the renderings has been something along this lines in this family right here. Very, very beige and earth tones again. Nothing bold for that. And I have colors if you want to know what the names of them are. But that's where we are here. What's that?
Yep.
I didn't hear what the materials were for the trim or the siding itself,
The siding will be a fiber cement lap siding. or-
like hardy plank.
Exactly. Or a.
And what's
so
the trim?
The trim will be
Wood?
a mix between fiber cement, trim, nominal thickness will vary.
3/4 inch
Yep. Or a PVC trim, depending on the location.
PVC
of it.
trim, okay, good.
Now, why don't you make a note that you're going to write all this down and send it to Bill Clark?
Okay. We actually have it in the.
You have it in your
draft.
conditions?
Yeah, that Ned has been preparing. So
Okay, well, that's good.
if you want, we can include colors in that, or I don't know if you guys need that, or.
Yeah, I think that if the board, unless the board is excited about changing the colors,
I'm just curious, the PVC to be painted in the field?
Yes.
is the board excited about changing the
PVC
colors?
is true.
I know we painted.
Oh, yeah.
I don't hear any excitement.
Vernon proof.
All right, well, write down the colors.
Sure.
And now, on your windows, what kind of windows are you going? You're going to have windows with muntins?
Yeah, so we'll develop a.
You're going to
a
develop a
latest-
window scheme?
Yeah, right now we have 2/1, I believe, on our rendering.
2/1 isn't bad. Does the board want something different?
Those muttons, are they going to be in between the thermal pane, or is it gonna be a piece of wood that is from the inside?
Depends on the manufacturer that we go with for that.
Because those grates inside disappear.
If
and then
you
all of a
have
sudden
two,
you notice
if you have only two, you could, it seems to me you could spring for
A surface one.
the actual
Yep.
division.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think that sounds okay to me.
Okay.
I'm happy with your,
With the with that proviso.
Sure.
You mean you want them actually separated?
Yep, they're going to actually be separated.
Oh,
What I, oh, it's right.
Okay.
What I see, and when I'm doing my inspections, I see that the grate is inside the thermal paint. But I think Alex thinks that it's gonna be.
This
Light,
is,
light.
we all think. You've just committed.
no, well, I misunderstood. I thought you meant surface applied,
Okay, well, it's gotta be both sides then.
On the interior and exterior, you mean?
Yeah.
No, it's in between the panes of glass.
No, I think what Bernie commented, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bernie, is that's not favorable because you don't see it. When you get shading and sunlight and stuff,
If
And
it's-
if it's low E glass,
If
it depends, if there's argon inside there, or if there's some sort of a filament, you'll get a glare, a green glare of the argon, or a red glare, so,
mullion won't be appear.
right.
So you have just said that you're not going to have buttons dividing the thermal panes. You're going to have them on top of the glass.
surface applied on top of the surface of the
Right,
glass.
okay, and so it's going to have to be on both sides for the reason that Mr. Lynch has said, that we want the people inside to be, feel that they're living in the past,
I've seen that.
and we want the people on the outside to be happy too.
Typically, they're just on the inside.
It's inside the
But,
two
but
pieces
he
of
just said you
glass.
can't
Although-
see it.
Oftentimes, they're just inside.
No, but that, I don't think we wanna see that, because those things disappear with time.
No,
I've never
because they're
seen it.
going to be beautifully constructed.
I misunderstood. I thought you were saying that if they were between the panes, you didn't desire that.
No, oh, they should be between the panes.
should be between
Should be
the
between the two pieces of
I
glass.
mean, in my house, they're phony mullions. They're on the inside of the glass.
And they
It's
disappear.
double pane, but they're on the inside.
Well, that's not good.
No, they break, you're trying to.
Exactly.
No, they can't.
But this is a window that they've had to replicate all over that building, so they can go back and order new grates when they disappear. This is a management company, it's not a condo, this is the management company that owns the building. So they can go back and replace the interior grates when they disappear.
And they can do the exterior grates too.
I've never seen exterior
I've never
grates.
seen
I
an
don't
exterior
think
grate
I've
like that.
seen.
No, it's-
It's called simulated divided light. Correct. It's called simulated divided light. We apply it both sides of the line.
Exactly right. That was just what I was thinking.
Wow.
Nice job.
Are they removable to wash the
No,
windows?
it's fixed.
Oh, they fix?
Okay, so, make a note of that.
And what's the material, Paul?
PVC window,
piece.
whether it's a wood, window, would be whatever it's construction side. It's, there's blue to,
Blue.
Well, you know, blue is actually taken significant advances in recent years.
It's not,
actually surround two, well, this is only 2/1, right? So there's only one strip.
Okay. What else, planning board, Milton? Mr. Clark, what do you have? The plumbing is, in order, you feel?
Yep, the drainage itself that Ned was talking about, the town is putting in new sidewalks, new streetlights down from Milton Village to Central Ave Business District. So we will be coordinating with Sullivan's on, the engineering and the construction of that pipe. There'll be new sidewalks, there'll be new lighting. The period lighting that's down in that area will now continue up over the hill. And we have had an agreement with the DPW. DPW is working with Sullivan's on a price. And we're working with MassWorks to get the whole thing put together as one package.
Excellent. The porches are going to be made of what? Wood?
Wood, the railings, we
Well,
have,
the porches, the whole shooting match.
PVC or
Trex are-
prefabricated aluminum.
Okay, we've got that, and we have the color there, Mike?
I don't see it.
The color will be within that same palette of the building.
We're going to add the color names. Is that what you wanted?
Well, I don't know, why don't you, on an elevation, just specify some colors?
Okay.
Just so that we don't get surprised where you're putting them. But I mean, we like the palette, but it would be nice to know how you're going to apply them. All right, what else?
Isn't that addressed in G of the conditions?
I don't know, is it addressed in G of the
It
conditions?
just says railings for, G says railings for balconies shall be either PVC or prefabricated aluminum painted in the field to match trim.
All right, but we're going to specify the color of the trim.
Right.
In
How
other
it just
words,
gives the colors,
it's
it
all
doesn't
going to
say.
be, it's going to be easy for the building inspector to know whether the colors are correct. Because it's going to be like one of those paint by the numbers painting bills. You know, you have 6 and you know exactly what it is.
So we're gonna put in
The
a
window trim.
letter H
Looks like
that's
Yeah,
going
we're
to,
going to have an elevation,
An elevation with little
colors matched.
things. And the window trim is going to be, you're
We've
gonna-
already got an elevation, all they need to do is put the letters and the
how
colors
thick is
on
the
there.
window trim, do
making sure
you
you
recall?
understand what
Yep.
she's
Yeah, just a
Isn't that
flat
what I asked
elevation.
for, what?
Right.
Yes.
Flat elevation with keynoted with the colors. and
Exactly.
the location. Yep.
That's why I'm looking at you.
Do we have a question on the width of the window trim?
No, yeah, I do. And the window trim and the door trim of the door leading out to the balconies.
Yep. Right now we're showing 5-inch thick trim.
Fine, okay.
That seems pretty good. Okay, well, right now and forever. I mean, once we put this to bed, it's 5 inches. Yes, yes. Right now. Come on, address the TV audience and identify yourself.
My name is John Zickwitz. I'm the co-chair of Milton Village Central Avenue Revitalization Committee. I'm also a registered architect. The committee met last night as requested, and they did approve the changes to the elevations that we discussed at the last meeting with the grand porch look and connecting all that. They did ask me to be a part of tonight's conversations on materials, and we had concerns about what the railings would look like. It's hard to tell. I don't know if you brought a rendering or not, Johnny, but it's hard to tell what they look like in the rendering, and we didn't want them to be, we want to see what they look like, because if they're too thin and look too weak, I mean, they're still playing a major role in what that elevation
This, the
looks like.
railings or the
Ballast.
The balusters on the railings, yeah.
the
so
balusters?
It's
So,
hard to tell from
they
this.
should be what, 2 by 2?
Something like that, something that I would think that would have some heft to it.
2 by 2?
And I'll leave this up to the architect, but
Well, I
I'd like to get an
understand, but
answer.
you want the architect to tell us.
Yeah,
2x2 then.
maybe something that matches the Henry's house porch. I think they probably have like a 2 by 2.
Yeah, 'cause that was, that's not a porch.
Oh, you replaced it,
We
okay.
didn't,
Oh,
you know,
Yeah.
but that porch section.
yeah. It needs some heft up there, we don't want something
All
real.
right, 2 by 2.
Thank you. And what color would that be? That's gonna be,
It'll match the trim, you know, this color.
so is it gonna be this, what be the, I guess I didn't understand what the 4
Right,
color.
bottom left, right?
Yeah, it would be this would be the trim color.
Okay,
These are just other
okay,
You can ask that.
great.
Just as a point of, you're talking about ballast as being 2 by 2.
Yeah,
You're going to put 2 by 2 typical baluster, because it's 1.5 by 1.5. Don't go out looking for a 2-inch piece. when
okay,
it's
so you're
1.5.
just saying that it isn't
It's
going
a
to be
2 by
the
2
old-fashioned 2 by
typical-
2, it's 1.5, is that how you understood
No, it's
this?
2 by 2 typical baluster.
A 2 by 2
Oh, I
typical
know what
baluster,
you're talking about.
which means a real 2 by 2?
No,
No, 1.5, 1 by 1.
All right, so it,
You buy a 2x4.
How they do it.
Fine.
A 2x4 is 1.5
Do
by
it now.
3.5.
Right.
But
well, what do you
It's
think
called
of, what do you think of that? Is, have we whittled this down too far?
That's good. No, that's fine. If we say 2 by 2 typical,
Okay.
we're fine. Because I'm not sure if the PVC aluminum bags, you do come to, I know if it was wood, it'd be 1.5, but yeah, that'd be right. Just wanted to have a presence up there, not look wimpy.
Okay,
Very
now,
much.
a question.
Just one other question. Lights, illumination on the porches. You gonna have ceiling lights or lights on the siding or what? And do the tenants have the right to turn the lights on and off, or are they gonna be?
Who controls it? So they could each have different levels
Yeah.
of lights running across there.
And they're not very big balconies,
That's true, they know.
they're not like, flooded.
Do all the balconies have ceilings to put the lights in, except for one or two on the end?
Yes.
So we'll, say ceiling lights, that's probably better, just because it would shine down.
Yeah, but if some people leave the lights on all the time, I mean, there's no symmetric to it, you know? Maybe the owner will pay for all the lights and they go on and off at certain times.
It's like the Prudential building.
They're gonna have, you'd have to use their own switch.
Switch both lights on at once.
It's the same thing, like if no one's in their apartment, it's dark and someone's home, it's light, so it's never
Right.
a symmetrical look ever to the building unless everybody's home or everybody's gone. So there's always that bit of organized chaos.
But you can put down ceiling lights, no significant light overspill.
Recess is.
Right.
And a certain wattage, I mean, you know,
Yeah, I
if
mean,
someone
we-
has 150 and the other one has 80, you know, it's just,
Yeah, no, I mean, the wall.
people concerned how it's gonna look,
Yeah.
you know?
That's why we're thinking recessed in, so it just shines rather than out.
No grills on the deck.
No, you can't have grills on that, so the roof on them. We don't want grills on that.
I do.
All right. John, anything else?
That's it, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. You've done a great job. It's a pretty nice project.
Yeah.
And
great.
the
Very happy with it.
developer and the architects and the lawyers have all contributed to a very pleasant process. So let's put it to bed next meeting.
Do you want to close the hearing today,
Yeah, I think we should. No, we're going to get the color charts.
or? Okay.
Well, we can
Yeah,
close
yeah.
it next week, but we'll have the, not next week, the 27th.
27th.
But we're looking forward to approval on the 27th. So thanks.
Thank you guys.
6:45 again on the 27th? Bill,
Bill?
you have anything on the 27th yet today?
can't look it up on the computer, so when do you want it?
6:45?
Yep.
Okay, now, let's discuss the housing production plan. Now, the housing production plan is a plan which DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, came up with. And it is supposed to disclose how the town plans to reach its 10% affordable housing goal, containing specifics. They really want to know exactly how it would happen. And if a town has a housing production plan, every year that they produce 0.5% of the total units in town affordable, they can get a year's reprieve from considering new 40B developments. And Milton doesn't have a housing production plan, if it did have a housing production plan, the plan would have to provide some realistic way of producing 48 affordable units per year. And the housing production plan is, as I say, it's can be a very useful thing, but it's a tricky business because, of course, in saying where you want to put affordable housing in town, there will be differing opinions. Some people will say that's a fine place for it, and other people will have a differing view. My feeling on this is that we have a master plan committee which has been constituted with citizens from throughout the town and a paid consultant, as well as representatives of the important boards. All important boards?
I would say the larger of the important boards, not every board.
Okay, many important boards.
Many important boards.
And I would, it seems to me that the master plan committee, when do they meet next?
We next meet around January 8th. When
It-
it's settled on the final date.
It seems to me that the master plan committee, which is in charge of visioning for the town, and obviously this has to be part of the vision, because a master plan which had no provision for affordable housing would be a very deficient master plan. And so if we had a housing production plan, and an acceptable housing production plan, it could be folded into the master plan in due course. So as an exercise, it probably is worthwhile, but I would like the master plan committee to have a full discussion of this, because and whether or not they're willing to give some visioning input as to where we should be going with this.
At your request, and also the request of the chair of the Board of Selectmen, Tom Hurley, who is here, I actually contacted our current consultant, Brown Walker, and asked them for three things. One, a cost estimate for doing a housing production plan, what it would include, and how long it would take. And I also clarified that our current consultant, in fact, is familiar with housing production plans, and they have done at least one. We also discussed the necessity of looking at affordable housing as part of the visioning process, and we agreed that at the first public forum, which will be held end of January, beginning of February, but closer to the end of January, we will make sure that some of what we discuss at that public forum will include affordable housing, and then as we go forward with the visioning process, that will be included. So that part will be there. For actually doing a housing production plan, you would still have to have a public process for that, and depending on how much of a public process would be, how much the cost would be. It can range between $10,000 and $30,000. The time, again, depends on how much of a public process. It will range from 3 to 6 months. And as you all know, a housing production plan must be done by both the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board. It's not one or the other. And what she said is included in the housing production plan is essentially what we got in our packets today and what Alex went over. Housing needs assessment, using demographics, and looking at development constraints and limitations, what the town's goals are, and then the implementation strategies, including identifying specific zoning districts and areas, and identifying specific sites. And that's where the public process and a lot of the work comes in, and why it is an additional cost to do that. So we have that information. I also said to both Alex and to Tom that I would have an article ready if this board and the Board of Selectmen wanted to consider putting an article into the annual town meeting or special town meeting for the costs or other ways of doing it. And I also have a draft charge for the master plan committee that adds looking at the housing production plan to the charge of the master plan committee. So we can either take action on any of these tonight, or we can wait until after the master plan committee has had a chance to meet and discuss the requests. I'd certainly like to make sure the other members are comfortable. I will say if we're doing an article for the town meeting, and the same goes for the other article we'll be discussing tonight, is we would have to make a decision at our next meeting to put it on. We could always choose to withdraw it after that, but we'd have to at least get it on at our next meeting because we have to make the Board of Selectmen's deadline.
Right, and I think that, Tom, do you want to, join us now? Because this is a matter that, both boards work together on.
We did, and I was appointed, or I guess I was the one that did induct, so I was appointed the liaison to the planning board from the Board of Selectmen to deal with the housing production plan. We did meet last Thursday and had a rather robust discussion about the housing production plan. I think all the selectmen support it. Beyond that, I don't want to talk to the other selectmen. I can say I definitely support a housing production plan if it's done for the right reasons. And I say the right reasons is in support of affordable housing, not to defeat affordable housing. So I want one that's carefully crafted, one that makes sense. And beyond that, I will, the selectmen will clearly work with the planning board towards that effort.
And I think that we should put the article on the warrant for submit an article for some funding for this thing. I mean, in the meantime, we're not going to be doing nothing. We're going to have the master plan committee do some work, and I think that will be valuable.
Right. I am also the Board of Select representative on the master plan committee, so I will work closely with that as well.
So it seems to me that that's a yes.
I'm trying to understand this correctly. You're gonna put an amendment to allot money for a plan that we're gonna decide whether we're gonna do or not?
No, we're going to, we'll put it in, we can always withdraw it. But we'll put in an article asking for money to do a housing production plan.
With the idea that we may not even do it.
With the idea that if we don't do it, the article will be not acted on.
We can
That's
withdraw
really
the
typical.
article before, yeah, but we can withdraw the article as long as we do it before the warrant goes to press. After the warrant goes to press, we'd have to ask town meeting simply to vote no on it. If we decide not to
But
do it.
town meeting would probably be quite willing to do that if we say we're not going to go ahead with it.
Right, but it's easy enough. The problem is the deadline, the conversation comes up. The deadline for getting an article onto the warrant with the Board of Selectmen is January 5th. So we'd have to make the decision.
This again is just for the funding.
Just to put the article on.
And then when do we have to make a decision on whether we're gonna commit to a plan or not?
We'd have to, if we were simply going to withdraw, we'd have to decide roughly by mid-March at the latest. The warrant committee would be doing its work before then to figure out funding. We have a range, so we know what range is. But if we hadn't made a decision at that point, we would still have the ability to make it before May. It's just
But
that
then it
at
would
that
have to
point,
be
it's
voted
already,
on.
yeah, exactly.
So by
And what's
March,
happened
we
in
can
the past.
withdraw it without a vote.
Yes, exactly.
I understand.
And this is the funding. I mean, the plan itself, once they do the plan, the selectmen have to approve it and the planning board has to approve it.
Right.
So it has to be, and then it gets sent off to DHCD for
Their approval.
their approval. And so it's a fairly complicated process. And even just doing the work on this planning is going to be very useful.
It would, you had mentioned, Alex, that it would supplement part of the master plan, which is the other article we need to discuss tonight and make a decision on it by our next meeting. It's true that this would cover a large part of what's in the master plan It wouldn't cover it all. There's some extra work that we'd have to do that would cover a large part of that. So that would reduce, not dollar for dollar, but would reduce some of the funding we would need to do the master plan. And it would certainly tie in with that so that we're not duplicating work from one to the other. And that's an important consideration when looking at these two documents.
I think another consideration too is the fact we already have an affordable housing plan.
We do.
So if we're gonna do a housing production plan, it should be somewhat consistent with the affordable housing plan that we've already adopted.
It should certainly take it into account. One of the things we talked about, you and I, was the fact that, and Alex said that separately, was the fact that that affordable housing plan was done, I think, right before the market crash.
Yes.
So it will certainly need to be updated.
Right.
That one, as part of doing the housing production plan.
As I recall reading that affordable housing plan, it had spelled out criteria for areas that would be beneficial to public housing, affordable housing, like close to public transportation and other comments like that.
Right, exactly.
Right. I don't know that that actually defines specific areas other than in general terms.
Exactly. I think it was general
That,
criteria.
yeah,
It wasn't.
if I said that, I didn't mean that. A criteria for it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that criteria are important. Certainly, identifying particular lots is probably not the best way of doing it, but identifying the criteria by which you can identify a good site is the preferable planning technique.
Do we think the affordable housing plan as it exists does a lot of the work that this?
I think that it identifies
does?
a lot of
believe the groundwork,
strategies.
Yeah.
It identifies strategies. I mean, I helped write it. And
It probably had 10 bullet points on what set the proper criteria for locations of affordable housing. I mean, I'm talking off the cuff, but it had quite a few points of what
it did.
would
It
suit it best.
It was a pretty good word.
I think the difference is that the housing production plan would end up being a lot more specific than the affordable housing plan and get into much more details. And we would have the mapping. I think one advantage of looking at it this way, which is to do funding at town meeting and a potential request at town meeting, is that we'll have had 2 out of the 3 community forums by that time, and we'll have had some of the results and visioning by the time we go to town meeting, and that may make a difference in what
It just
we
always
request.
strikes me that Milton is very built out. And to be more specific, might box yourself into a corner because there aren't undeveloped tracts of land that people can say, well, this specifically would be a good place to start developing something.
Well,
One of the reasons for having the criteria, because I think there's a surprising amount of land that's not built on, but the criteria that we as a community come up with may define, well, this area is the area that we want to see this type of housing, and this area isn't, and this is how we're defining the criteria. As you say, public transportation, access to public transportation is very important when it comes to affordable housing. So there are other criteria like that that we should define as a community.
I think you also have to look at not only development but redevelopment, because we do have significantly older areas in the town that sooner or later will be redeveloped.
Right.
And looking at those areas to see what would be appropriate, perhaps in terms of zoning changes.
They may be underutilized areas at the moment.
It's just, again, where I'm coming from is, it's just to spend money on something that may be already virtually in place is skeptical.
well, it is a separate plan, and the affordable housing plan, since I was a principal author of, I don't think does fills the bill. So it would need additional work. Yes, Mr. Clark.
I think if you go back and look at the affordable housing plan, it talks more about goals. What the housing production plan is going to be is the implementation
Right.
plan for those goals. When you go back and say that we're really built out, well, that's why developers use 40B strategies, because they don't have to worry about what your zoning says. They don't have to worry about how things fit. They don't care about how you feel. We have identified, well, but that's the reality. You're looking at many of these same sites, and you're trying to come up with a housing-wise and where you wanna take and put some of this, affordable housing.
Well, at least design criteria by which the site can be identified.
But I think Selectman Hurley made a point that kind of jives with what I was getting at, that there's probably gonna be a lot of redevelopment, and we don't presently know anything where that is.
No, no.
But one of the things the housing production plan is help define where you would like it to be.
Well, it also defines.
Again, if it's redevelopment, I can't decide, I like it to be in a neighborhood that already
But
exists.
that is, the question is, what will the criteria be?
Well, again, I think your housing plan set out criteria. It didn't get specific, yes, but again, I'm just,
Well,
I hesitate to spend money on things that, I mean, when you say it would be in addition to the housing plan that exists already, well, we can keep going with that. We could say, well, it could be another plan that could be in addition to this plan. And we
The
could just
housing
keep going to the nth
production
degree.
plan is going to be what is approved by the planning board and the board of selectmen. And if DHCD doesn't like it, then DHCD won't approve it. But the plan is our plan, and we're not going to get forced into doing anything we want to do. It simply is that we should explore it and see how far we can go. And with any luck, we'll go the whole way. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But making the effort is worthwhile.
There's a significant amount of information you have to look at.
Right.
There is.
Now, one thing, having a housing production plan is useful if a big comp permit development gets approved. You do get your year off. And currently, we've got a couple of potential comp permit projects. One behind the DPW yard on Old Randolph Avenue, and the other right across from Fuller Village, which is a new development, which apparently is going to be called Mill Creek. And I brought some information on Mill Creek for the board's perusal, if they want to take a look at it. But having a housing production plan, if one of these comp permit projects were to be approved, then with the plan in place, you would get a respite for a year, which is would be some breathing space, and then you go back to it. Unless you can produce 48 units a year.
That confuses me, and I hesitate to ask because there's so much information to go through here. I'm asking for a position that I just really don't know much, but you're saying that having this housing production plan would insist that you produce a certain number of
No, it wouldn't.
housing units a year?
It wouldn't insist. It would simply say we project that we will produce 48 units per year.
Again, that sounds like a lot. I mean,
Well, it is a lot. It is a lot, and certainly there are any number of towns with housing production plans who don't meet their annual goal and therefore don't get a year's respite. But it isn't the end of the world. It certainly helps them in the production of affordable housing, and it's a worthwhile thing to do.
I think the important thing that the housing production plan does do is, if you have one filed and you can meet your 0.5% progress towards goal, then you do get the 1-year exemption. If this Mill Creek development were to go in, we had a housing production plan, we'd actually get a 2-year, because it's a 1%, wouldn't it be a 1% towards goal? More than 1% actually. So whether you split it across 2 years, whether you just have the whole thing 1 year, you'd still get a 2-year exemption. So what that allows you to do is, again, be more proactive and keep design much more local. Should a developer come in within that 2-year period and want to build more affordable housing, you can do it more on your terms because they don't have the luxury of going to the state with a comp permit.
It's permissive at that point. It becomes permissive. In other words, the ZBA can approve a comp permit project during the 2-year respite, but they can't appeal it to the Housing Appeals Committee. That's my understanding.
Tom, I mean,
What?
They can deny it.
They can deny it, and then the Housing Appeals Committee will not come in and...
Right, you said they can approve it, and I'm like, no, they can deny one.
Oh, all right.
At which point the
Right,
state.
exactly. The state would not, in other words, it would be a local, purely local situation during that 2-year period.
I gave you several different communities, sample plans to look at. You have Bridgewater, Duxbury, Walpole, I have here Plunkett, Foxborough, and a couple of others. And you see the numbers. Bridgewater said that they would produce 42. Duxbury said they produce 43. Walpole has to produce 62. If you go in and look at the plans, they'll tell you what they have done in the last couple of years. And they really haven't attained that number, and they'll give you the negative as to why in some places. In some places, they've taken and accepted a 40B so that they can get over that. I know that Bridgewater has accepted 2 so that they are done for the next couple of years. They'd rather be proactive and take on a few of these projects so that they don't have to keep waiting for the next comprehensive permit.
So if you don't meet the required number,
Yep.
then you're under the same guidelines you were before you even had this plan in effect.
Yes.
It's like the plan's non-existent for the most part, as far as governing what's going on. I mean, it just, in other words, somebody comes in to do a 40B, you deny them,
In a direct.
you haven't met the limit, they just go to the state, as they would have done in the past anyway.
But then the state now has a document that says what your goals and criteria are for the affordable housing. So for example, if you have said, we would like our affordable housing in this area near, to use your criteria, public transportation, and somebody is proposing a 40B as far away from public transportation as you can get in Milton, you get to go and say, well, the ZBA looked at this, the town goes and says, the ZBA looked at this, and one of the many reasons we don't want this particular 40B is because it's so far away from public transportation. And so the question is, does that now give you a depending on how the criteria define, does that now give you a negotiation point with the state and developer that you wouldn't otherwise have had because you haven't defined the community goals?
That brings us full circle. If you don't meet the limit, I understand what you said as an argument, but I would assume it's still the state's decision at that point. But yet we have an affordable housing plan in place in Milton, which in fact does argue a point.
I don't believe it's in place, but it's, we have it.
So that would be evidence that you could bring to the state and say, we try to be proactive, we try to promote certain criteria to develop 40B housing. One of the things we ask for is for it to be transportation, and I'm only using public transportation just because that's become part of our conversation.
Exactly.
And as such, I would have the same pretty much argument that you have. Only you've got a plan that says production plan, I have a plan that says public housing plan.
Well, except you're not going to be able to extract from that plan what you want to extract, I don't believe. I think that plan is,
That's your goals.
It's your goals. It's almost like that was your vision.
But I'm just using it as an argument to go to the state, still your goals are your goals.
But the state can say, look, this was 2006, exactly.
Well, if you didn't make your numbers in your production plan, what did you do to make it? Because you didn't make it. I mean,
I've taken my goals and I've broken out what my goals are. I've stated where they are, how I'm going to achieve it.
And you may have achieved some of it, you just may not, if our goal is 48 units a year, and we make 35 off the top of our heads. We can go to the state and look, say, look, have you seen the economy? There's no way we can do 48 a year, but we have made 35 or whatever.
But I mean,
it is. And so we're making progress.
Why do you need this plan in place to make those arguments? Those arguments are good arguments anyway.
I think the proof at that point would be those 35 units were in accordance with the production plan that we implemented.
And again, the specificness of this production plan, again, and I'm not trying to be argumentative or be the naysayer of all of it, but if you're going to get specific, again, it would be difficult to me in the town of Milton to get specific, and I think you made some good reasoning behind it. I mean, there's going to be areas in Milton somewhere 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the line that maybe redeveloped and become somewhat of a different neighborhood, whatever the case may be. But I couldn't say that today.
Well, the master plan committee is meant to do just that.
Well, that's like a crystal ball. That's
Exactly. That's what the master plan's all about.
I don't want to pay somebody to tell me that they're going to predict that neighborhood X is going to be such and such in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, 10 years.
That's not entirely what the master plan does.
Well, then I heard one person say it is, and one person say it is. I guess I got to get up with it.
The point, actually, I want to bring up a question that you asked your first couple of meetings on the board, and it was a good question, which is why I'm bringing it up. A developer had come to us with, I think it might have been the assisted living developer, and he came to us with a proposal and for that particular site. And I remember you saying, do we just say yes when a developer shows up with a particular site? And the answer is we have, as a community, generally been reactive and generally have waited for somebody to come forward. What a master plan allows us to do, what a housing production plan potentially allows us to do, is be more proactive in saying we as a community want certain types of things, whether it's the preservation of open space, whether it's certain types of development near public transportation, whether it's certain types of development far away from public transportation. We want this, these are the areas we want it in, and so when a developer comes and says, I'd like to put assisted living on this parcel here, you say, that's great, we're glad you want to do assisted living, but we as a community have decided that that's not the area we need assisted living in. This is the area that we need assisted living. Can we work with you to do that? That's what allows us to do. It also allows us to look ahead and say, we know this type of development is going on around our borders, and we know that's going to have some sort of effect on the traffic implications. So as we look into the future, what do we need to do to mitigate those traffic impacts? And who do we talk to? Are that things that the town has to do? Do we talk to the developers and say, look, that's great, you're going in here, but in fact, there's somebody across the border that's also going in there. You need to do some traffic mitigation. So the master plan is a tool for us proactively managing the development. The housing production plan is a similar tool on a more concentrated level in that it specifically looks at affordable housing.
I'll drop it at this point.
I can give you a couple more concrete examples of what could, not necessarily would, but could. One would be, through the visioning process, you define an area that may be appropriate for zoning change to allow multiple family dwellings. If one of the dwellings is affordable, or if both of them are affordable, where it's just single family zone now. Perhaps in a commercial district, like East Milton, if somehow you can fix the parking, you allow residential above commercial, which is not allowed by zoning now. So in a production plan,
I think that's one of the bullets in the affordable housing plan that exists.
Yeah, probably is. So there are those kinds of things that you can envision through the master plan, hold the public hearings through the production plan, and perhaps effectuate a zoning change.
You weren't totally off the mark, and not by any means correctly, but when they come in with the assisted living, my question was that they were setting the parameters for the assisted living.
Right, yeah.
And it confused me that you let the developer set his own parameters. To me, that's like playing a game where the guy sets his own rules. It doesn't seem quite right. But with that said, you seem to think probably that I'm arguing. I'm more or less looking at it like it's almost a ridiculously impossible task. Again, I use examples of a town that has vast open areas. I mean, Plymouth always comes to mind. I know it's geographically, it's a very large town. And you might have an area in the northwest, and an area in the southeast, and an area in the center that's completely undeveloped. And we may say that going forward, we may like to see this, maybe this, like you suggested, this northwest area of town borders commercial space and adjacent towns, and there's on the commuter rail. This is where we'd like to see going forward, that we'd start developing that type of housing. It always perplexes me that people think that that kind of thing would be doable in Milton. It's just, there's no place to, and I know you brought up some developments, but they're still very limited and isolated relative to some towns.
And I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think Milton's a very challenging town for meeting the DHCD's goals. And one of the things that might come out of the housing production plan is there is simply no way we can make 48 units a year. But I also think, because I've looked at the parcel maps, there's pockets of places in Milton that could be developed that we, as a community, aren't aware of, but developers may be. And the question is, first of all, we need to know where these pockets are. And second of all, we need to know whether or not the zoning on those is suitable, whether or not a developer can come in and put in a level of density that is not appropriate for that area. And how are we going to deal with that? And that's why I look at these plans and say, there's a lot of things that are working on Milton that could change it. We need to be proactive about how we're going to manage, because as you said, change is going to happen. So how do we manage that change? And having these community conversations and producing these documents are the way to do that.
Well, I would say this, that currently we have no housing production plan. The developer could buy a lot of land and propose a comprehensive permit, and the town is basically at the mercy of the developer. The 300 units proposed across from Fuller Village are there's no transportation, there's right on the foul meadow. It seems to me a very inappropriate place for the sort of development that they're proposing. And if we had a housing production plan, it could make that very clear that this is not the criteria that should be applied. But if we have no criteria, if we do no planning, and just sit around and wait for developers to take pot shots at us, this is what we're going to get. We're going to get these until we get to the 10%. I mean, having a plan is not is meant to help the town. It's not meant to hurt it.
Well, I'd like to think that I'd like to see more evidence that what Emily suggested is concrete, and that is that this gives evidence to the state or to outside entities that just because we didn't meet the goal, because again, I think the goal would be so difficult this time, that
we're not likely to meet the goal.
You're in the same boat you were in before you spent X amount of dollars.
Except we have a plan, we've done planning. I mean, it's the same thing about doing master planning. I mean, what's the point of master planning? It's the same, it's to do well. Planning, we are actually the planning board, and planning is supposed to be our business.
Yeah,
and if we refuse to do any planning, it seems to me that we are neglecting our duties.
But again, I simply hate to see spend money on this, do this, come up with a plan, have a developer come in, work with this. You haven't met your goal anyways. The state says, well, he's going to do it because you didn't met your goal anyways. Well, we tried. Yeah, but you didn't. That's too bad. That's a nice plan. It's a great plan, but
as Emily says, if you have a plan and you do your best, or do
best faith,
you do pretty good. That actually, it's all classification. Well, no, I mean, it can make a difference. It certainly doesn't hurt, Mike. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I can also report out, because I think it's somewhat related, Bill Clark and myself and Anne Marie Fagan did go up to Concord to see no creeks. Other development that would probably be somewhat similar to the development they're proposing on Brush Hill Road, so I can kind of report out what that looked like. And it's 350 units that and they went over the limit because that got them to their 10% affordable limit in Concord. They're very high-end developments. The inside, the interiors are very, very nice. You know, these are $2,500 a month rental units. You know, the affordable is obviously cheaper. Like I said, they're very high-end. The grounds are very pretty. The clubhouse is beautiful. They have grilling areas outside. They have playgrounds. They have dog parks. It's really not a similar site to the site they're proposing, although it is.
It was an old brownfield, wasn't it?
It was an old, it's an upland site. It was totally.
It's a radar testing site.
Yeah.
What testing?
A radar testing.
Testing site. It's 30 acres, flat as a pancake, no trees.
Right,
No
it was leveled, and so it was easy to develop.
Top of the hill.
There's no wetlands. It does abut the Ascot River, so it's pretty, but it doesn't have anywhere near the challenges that the Brush Hill Road site would have. The exterior, I wasn't as wowed by the exterior as I was the interior. There's a lot of vinyl siding throughout the complex. The parts you can see when you first go in, like the clubhouse is hardboard, but the rest of it pretty much is vinyl. Color scheme, I don't think was too bad. And again, I'm not a planner or anything, so, but that's just my initial impressions. But I would suggest that the planning board or some members might want to take a trip out there just to kind of see what they look like. I did want to sit down with the town planner also in Concord just to kind of get an idea of what the experience was like with the developer. I hadn't had a chance to do that yet. If he or she was busy that day, so we still do plan on doing that. And that's about it.
That would be a good starting point for a town like Concord did for the state with their plan, when they didn't make the limit and was able to get their own well.
They did it themselves.
Yeah.
Their ZBA did it.
Did the plan?
Yeah.
No, but my point is, has there been an occasion where a town has taken their plan to the state and said, we've made the best effort, we didn't reach our goal, but we would like to maintain the right not to have certain well in certain area?
Developments, actually, the Housing Appeals Committee has turned down if you get the figures, you'll find that they've turned down a number of developments. People in Hopedale, they had an airport, and the developer wanted to put the development into flight path, and the Housing Appeals Committee said, no.
No, but again, I'm saying on the grounds of having a housing production program.
Well, let's see what the visioning people say, and we're not there yet, but let's give the visioning people some time to do some visioning and see what they can come back with. And in the meantime, we'll do a draft article for some Dell, but it's nothing concrete yet. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Now, Ned, how was the concert? You were...
Video it, so if you want me to play it. Just the audio is here, so. We got the equipment there. Go ahead,
683 Buffalo Road.
She sang, William McDonald. Folk song.
783 Buffalo
Two other
Road.
young women, and they were beautiful.
Okay, Jim, do you want to come up to the table, because I have a feeling that Okay, what do you, Dan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about 683, 685 Bushel Road? This is a continued public hearing.
This is Ned Corcoran, attorney on behalf of RNG Development. Jerry Rankin has proposed the Barnett Estates subdivision of the old Boyle Estate on Brush Hill Road, essentially picked up and trying to close on the development that was proposed by Corvo. Before we were here a month ago, I think we were essentially close to a vote, but we held to see if we could work out some minor tweaks to the location of the driveway as it intersects with Brush Hill Road. I know that Jerry and Tim met, and there was some disagreement as to whether or not what we can do, but what our clear position is that we are happy to try to coordinate some minor tweaks in the field, but that what we understand to be asked to either move the driveway or to realign the driveway would require a complete redraw of the plan. That's thousands of dollars of engineering effort and weeks of delay that we're not prepared to undertake. But we're happy to, and it would redraw lot lines in a way that would really effectively change the subdivision. So our position is that we want to close on what we've understood to be an approvable subdivision, and we are prepared to work with 10 and 11 neighbors in terms of some minor efforts to tweak the pavement location in the field, so long as it doesn't require resetting drainage structures and other elements, utilities with respect to that. So I think that fairly characterizes where we are.
Well, that, I think, sets the issue. What do you have to say, Mr. Kerman?
Well, I would agree with what Ned says. I don't want to start off by saying we've got a good working relationship. I'm going to continue. Let me show you what we're up against, just in case people can't see very well. I'm just going to stand up so that I can point to things. This is Brush Hill Road that runs right down in front here. You can see it, I apologize for it. And the entrance is right here. There's a stone wall that comes up around here and then curves into the earth as the driveway slopes up, so the stone wall sort of disappears here. On the right side, as you're looking at, here's the piece that's in question. It's just this section of stone wall over here. And this is a very unique piece of stone wall. Notice all the colored rocks that are in it. It's nicely built, it's in nice shape, and it just, beginning about here, it just sort of curves up around the entrance of the driveway. It's a very aesthetically pleasing, nice, old stone wall. It's part of the history of the road. All we're trying to do, if I understand the developer, they would like to cut the stone wall at about a 12-foot mark back, which would be about behind the telephone pole here. And what we proposed to them last week is that if we just move the driveway over about 12 feet, this is almost a 60-foot width here, maybe it's not quite the width, more like 40 feet, but there's plenty of width here just to take the driveway and just scoot it over and go up the property. So that's all we were proposing to do. And I know Bill Clark went out with Fire Chief and others this past Monday to look to see whether or not this plan was feasible. And the engineer came back and said no. I'm upset because I think that this is something that's very doable. Just because the engineer doesn't want to go through the effort of doing it is problematic in my mind. This is a beautiful historical section of the road. It's aesthetically pleasing, and I would think that, and I know that Jerry is willing to do whatever it takes. So I don't mean to suggest that the developer is not willing to do this. I realize it does cost extra money, and maybe there's savings involved.
If I can just address that right there, I don't have a problem of bringing the wall where it's supposed to. First of all, the main issue is the fire department, and correct me if I'm wrong, the fire department and the turn, so that the fire truck can access the property from both sides of the street. And I can, even if we do bring the wall back, I can replicate that wall and just bring it a little bit further and have the same wall replicated in a different, just further back, just replicating, bringing it back to what the plan is and replicating that exact thing. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have any issues working with him. The only issue is mainly one, if it, on a continuance basis from the development point of view, it costs me and my partner more money, not only in redesign, but it's to extend my agreement with the centers. So I have to every month or everything, it costs a substantial amount of money to extend. Like I said to Tim, I don't have a problem in the field working with him and trying to. I want to keep the integrity of the wall, stone wall. That's where my career with them. So I don't have an issue with that. And there is a number of issues. And Mr. Developer has access. Secondly, the neighbor right here at Bushel. And if we push the road over, his access may be changed as well. So that's another issue that may have to be looked at if we do change from the plan. So, but like I said, if you're just looking to keep a look at it, that can easily, my mason can easily bring it back a little bit forward and show the curvature to work with to have a problem.
Right, and I appreciate that, but I think this is a lot of large openings here. And if we cut this open more and expose more of the sort of wide open throat of the driveway, it's gonna change the nature of the way it looks. And so while I recognize that they could move the stone wall, I have no problem if they would take it out and put it right back where it was. But it just seemed to me that if we just move the asphalt, the bed of the asphalt, not necessarily the right of way, the bed of the asphalt, over to this side as much as we possibly can. And yes, I realize the fire truck wants to have a 90-degree angle to get up there. Is 85 degrees fine? Maybe 80 degrees is fine.
All right, Mr. Clark.
Whether it's 85 or 95, on the ground you'll never see the 5 degrees. The issue here is it needs to be 90 degrees to bring the truck in. It's, as soon as you make that turn, you're going up a hill. And you have waivers in here for the hill, and you're going to take and jog the road again as soon as you start up that hill. You also have a very large cut to the right-hand side of this pavement. The issue that Tim's talking about is if they take and slide the road to the left, they now cut into the no disturb buffer zone here. You also now have an effect coming back towards the envelope of the house that's there, or should be coming on that first one on the left. There's the potential to take and, right now the difference between the wall opening is 24 feet. You could take what you take from the right-hand side and put it on the left and bring the wall up. It is okay for the developer to take and rebuild the wall on the other side and bring it down. I did talk to the fire chief and the DPW director, because if you see where the cone is, there's a catch basin right there. That catch basin would be almost, it would be just to the right of the road. Actually, it would be in the middle of the road. So it has to be moved. It would have to be moved over. The question came down, do you want to take and move that catch basin in that utility pole, or do you want to try to save the catch basin, save the utility pole, bring the road over? You are going to clip that other corner, but your road has to go up straight for a distance of 60 plus feet. It has to go in straight. The truck's 42 feet long. We know that. So you can't have it going up and snaking as soon as it turns in. So we know that the requirements from the DPW's rules and regs say a 90-degree roadway. Your rules and regs say 90 degrees. Making it 95, making it 85, you'll never see the 5 degrees that's there. We're talking about 18 feet of pavement. We're not worried about the 5 degrees. That's where Joey says he'll work with the homeowners out in that area. The bigger issue is the wall. You want to replicate the wall on the left, you want to replicate the wall on the right. And that goes back to the point of, if you somebody's going to have to redraw the plan, because you're not going to accept the plan that isn't what's on the ground. He's going to have to come back with an as-built in the end, and it shouldn't be all that much different than the plan that you approved to start with. So if they want to make the change, when do they want to make that change?
I'd certainly be open to moving the left-hand side of the stone wall, because I think that what happens, if you wanted to cut this back and bring this back up here, that would end up as the same effect, right? And I think that what we were proposing to do, my proposal to the front, was keep that 90 degrees, move it over 60 feet, move it over 12 feet, and keep the 90 degrees. But maybe the bottom line is, if the board is willing to allow the developer to come back with minor modifications such as those we're talking about to do the best job it possibly can to try to keep the visual quality of the road.
We're taking the road outside of the road feed layout.
It seems to me that we've got a replication of the wall on the left, which you're willing to do, and which will have the same amount of space. You don't have to re-engineer it, and it won't be the original wall, but it'll be a replicated wall, and you've got people who can do that. I mean, it seems to me that that's how it's going to be. It's going to be replicated, and we will give you the ability to deal with them on the replication process.
They'll be using those colored stones, sorry. No. They'll be using the same colored stones from one side, putting them in on the other, so you're not using the colored stones for the natural, what's there now.
And the bus stop.
Is that the dance that we used to do back in
Your daughter just sang it. No, the bus stop that we had talked about. Aren't we interfering with that?
I thought the agreement last time was that
It's going to be a flat.
just a flat
area is about to still be achieved.
It's on top of the drainage structure, so yes, it will be flat.
Okay, and we will allow for tweaking of the surface. Right? Still tweaking the surface, that will be one of the tweaks that can come down a little. Okay. So it seems to me where replication with the ability for you to discuss the replication and get it done. The replication would mean you're going to take the wall from one side and put it on the other side. What else? What other issues are there? That's it? Okay. Any other issues in the audience? Okay. So, I think we're ready to vote. Ready to vote?
Close the hearing.
I think that's a good plan. We have a second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. The hearing is closed. Did you say aye, Mike? I did. I said I did. You said I did. All right, now we have an approval plan. We're going to add the tweaks to it. But it's ready to go, right? The approval plan, once we add the tweaks. Do we have an approval plan? An approval document?
No.
Okay, well, let's vote to approve the plan subject to the various conditions that have been discussed, which will be identified in detail in either on the plan, which most of the stuff has to be on the plan itself, or in the written approval that the board will sign at its next meeting.
Everything but the piece about the wall is on this set of plans.
Okay, so it would be,
It's pretty much just what these plans are, and I don't see anything other than what's on the plans themselves.
No, the plan is,
The plan is what it is, and if they're going to allow replication of the wall,
well, shall we try the Bosworth thing again? Once I, okay.
You just alarmed.
Once we get the written approval in order, we'll vote to approve subject to the tweaks and the conditions that have been discussed.
yes.
And then, once we've got the written thing, I will file with the town clerk, I will sign it for the board, and file it. I will sign.
Signatures on it?
Well, we're going to do the Bosworth thing in place of that.
We're going to get to sign the final documents.
Right, you're going to get to sign the plan.
What goes to the clerk to stop the clock will be the decision signed by Mr. Wells.
Okay, so we'll do that, and you get there, and I will, on behalf of the board, yes.
Just one further question. You're moving the roadway a little.
No.
The wall, okay. I'm just thinking if that, the water is shedding down that hill, is it going to
There are huge stormwater detention systems on this plan. They're all designed there, all the details are in there.
Okay. Okay?
Right at the base of the driveway.
at the base?
Right at the base.
Well, they're coming down the hill. They start at the top, there's some in the middle, and then the bigger one on the bottom. And then that...
How far is the bottom one from pressure?
Feet?
I'm just thinking of 10 or 15 feet of driveway that's going to have water shedding off. No. It's not?
No, these structures are,
This is a well-engineered plan.
40 by,
I can agree.
12 by 40.
All right.
They're notched on the second.
Pipe all the way over to Milton Hill. So the vote would be that I sign the approval for filing with the clerk on behalf of the board, subject to conditions and tweaking.
All right.
Okay?
Mr. Chairman,
Do we have
I move that, subject to the conditions and tweaking that we just discussed, that the board vote to approve this plan and allow you to file the decision.
all right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so we're going to get this done faster than the Bosworth thing. But the next thing we're going to do is sign the Bosworth decision. Tonight.
Oh.
Did you want to take out the Bosworth decision and... And take out your Bosworth decision.
You don't have to sign the ruling?
We're going to sign 3.
And I'm going to need the second one. Okay, since you're signing it.
You weren't here.
Okay.
You have a Bosworth decision?
Should be,
Give me your Bosworth decision, please, Mike.
it's in the thin yellow document.
Mr. Lynch, are you signing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes.
One more, he's signing it, I'll sign it, you'll sign it?
That's
He's got it, it's going to my... Oh, you can't sign it, so I don't...
That's what I keep saying.
I'm always ready to.
You ever gonna sign it?
No. You know, meetings are nothing.
No.
I feel he's on a lot, but I need to do nothing.
50 years from now, it'll be going.
Okay, 86 Walcott. 86 Walcott,
Choice. And then still gonna talk about these things, right?
yeah.
We've done that one. We still have that and that.
Okay, now, where were we, Bill? I was in today to get a copy of the final plan with all the stuff on it, and didn't see it, but we can do this on the wall. Okay, so this is it. So we're going to file, it's a Mylar too.
Ah.
We're not going to sign it, we're going to approve the subdivision, right?
Yep. All the pieces should be on.
Well, we're not signing it. We're not signing it. I'm going to file the decision on this thing. Is everything in order here, Bill? The covenant we're going to attach to the approval filed with the board.
Did you want it?
What?
Yeah, the homeowners.
The homeowners, we're going to file an approval with the town clerk. We're going to reference this plan. I don't see that there are any amendments on the plan, but we're going to...
Did you see the covenant copies?
Yes. And I thought the covenant looked okay.
No, we've already done both.
All right, but in any event, I think this is good. What I'm going to suggest that we do is authorize me to sign the written approval to which will reference these plans and I'll staple the covenant to it. And by the way, the Bosworth decision, you have to staple the easement. You have to staple the easement to that decision. You hear that, Gene? Don't let him file that thing with the town clerk without stapling the easement to it.
Staples get loose.
What?
Did you sign it?
Why are you gonna pay for
We
that?
have signed it.
We have just signed it.
We should have that on there.
It is on there. It simply they have to.
I know.
Okay.
So you want us to-
It's the sign thing that he did. That Mr. Sheffield had a few issues with, but we've worked through them, I think.
So you want us to close the public hearing on this one
Yes.
and then vote to allow you to sign? All right, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
All right.
Just for Mr. Kelly's, he's getting it complex, he doesn't get to sign these things. You will get to sign the plans for this.
If you're here. If you're here.
And here's the PE, told me I haven't signed the plans.
You'll get these, you'll get 683, 685. But yeah, after the 20-day appeal period.
Right.
Right. Okay, and the approval will staple the covenant to it. And I think that we don't have any DPW issues.
No.
We don't have any issues.
They had none because they're putting in a new water line, they're putting in a new fire hydrant.
Okay, this is,
So you now need a vote to approve the plan,
yeah,
subdivision, and authorize you to file, correct?
right,
So moved.
that's okay. All in favor? Aye. So we're moving right along here. So you're welcome. Thanks for your assistance. Now, let's hear about the master plan, Emily.
Well, I gave you most of the update already, but I'm going to repeat some of it.
Well, maybe we should, because we have two lawyers here about assisted living.
We also had some members of the master plan committee, at least one of whom has already left, because we could have offered it. I'm happy to split it whichever you prefer.
Well, either the lawyers get the charge for their time, and the master plan committee doesn't, so,
I could spin this out for hours. And the update is that we met last month, November 27th, and topics of discussion included the upcoming public forum, which will be, as I've said, the end of January is what we're targeting now. We're just double checking it against various other town schedules. The first one is likely to be a Saturday morning. Our next meeting, which will be right about January 8th, will determine that. We're also going to talk about the format, and we will be trained as facilitators. So I will update you after that. The part of the requirement for our consultant was to provide recommendations on how to do the rest of the master plan and to provide a cost estimate of doing that so that we could go to town meeting to request the rest of the funding. You should have a document called Phase 2 Recommendations that was in your packet. This gives the context of what we're doing now, discusses the overview of what a master plan is, the elements that would be required, describes what the consultant team would be, and talks about the associated costs. The article that we would submit for the town meeting is essentially the same as the article that we submitted last spring. Do not see it in your packets, but I have language for it here. It's actually similar to what we do for the housing production plan. And again, in order to request the funding, we would have to approve this article to go forward by our next meeting. It has to meet the January 5th deadline. Similar to the article for the housing production plan, if we, for some reason, decided we did not want to do it after the first and second public meetings for visioning process, we could always pull the article in March. But in order to meet the deadlines, it would have to be going on to the first selectmen's agenda January 5th, which means we have to approve it December 27th. And that's what I have for you.
Well, so we'll read this and act on it next time.
Yes.
Okay, master plan committee?
What? The board can be trained as facilitators too.
Yes, actually there's two things. The board can, of course, if you would like to be facilitators of the public meeting, you're welcome to come to our next master plan meeting and get trained as facilitators. The other thing is the consultant is going to do a short questionnaire for members of the master plan committee, planning board members, and board of selectmen members. So you should receive that questionnaire very soon. It can be done either SurveyMonkey, the way we did the questionnaire for the entire town, or for those who don't have internet access or prefer paper, we'll have a paper copy as well. You should be receiving that within the next week or so if you haven't already received it. Not quite sure which week they were going to send it out. So, and we would very much value planning board's opinions on master planning and what they see as the goals for the town. So we specifically requested that the planning board and the board of selectmen be included in this one.
Cheryl, what do you have to say about all this?
About the master plan?
Yeah. Are you going to discuss assisted living also? Because after all, we want you to, we don't want you to feel like you've wasted your year.
I think Emily stated it well on the master plan committee thus far. We did, I think one of the things that we all spoke about was making sure that we got good turnout for the public forums, and that each of us on the committee would make an effort to bring people there. And I think one of the things that Emily said when the committee was selected was that there was good representation from the entire town, and so that if everybody representing a fair section of town could get people to the public forums, then we'd get good comprehensive participation. I think that's really the thing that everybody was focused on.
We may even do a sign list for who has to bring how many people, but certainly at the last master plan committee meeting, there were a number of excellent ideas of how to do public outreach to reach as many people as possible in town, because the point of this visioning session is to get as many opinions, as many ideas, as many goals into the public forums as possible. So we are looking forward to that public outreach process. That will begin at our next meeting, yes.
Can you send out an email on the government facilitator?
Absolutely.
To the planning board, just...
Or Bill can.
I just have a question as well. This again is on pretty much the same time that you just did explain that we could pull this funding by March. With that in mind, how much concrete information will we have from phase one to look at by that time frame to say that, you know, it makes sense to keep going forward?
Right. By mid-March, we should have gone through 2 out of the 3 public forums. The last public forum is the one where the results are presented, and right now, we have it scheduled for right after town meeting, because that allows us to use town meeting to publicize the fact that the results will be done, but in fact, we'll have written elements before that, and we may choose to move that up, depending on how we see things go. But we'll have 2 out of the 3 before we would have to make a decision. Yes.
Yeah, from 2 out of...
Absolutely.
And by town meeting, we'll have a report.
The final report will be written after town meeting, but we will have most of the information for that report, yes.
But again, on that timeline, you told me by March, we'd have to make a decision on whether we wanted to go forward.
We'd have to make a decision if we wanted to pull the article.
Yes. Until the day...
We said we still vote it down, but it would take a lot parliamentary action than it would if we made that decision prior to this mid-March date.
Yeah, basically what happened is if it went to town meeting, the chair of the planning board who at this next town meeting would be Alex, would have to stand up and say, we request that you vote no funding or vote no on this article, rather than just simply having it pulled out. Absolutely, you're correct on that. So, but we will have sufficient information, I believe, by mid-March to make that decision, because we'll have the information from 2 out of the 3 public hearings. Or public forums, rather.
Okay. Thanks, Master Planners. Now, assisted living.
While we're waiting for the other to come up for assisted living, who has the Mill Creek documents that got passed around?
Give them back to Bill.
That's right there.
That's it.
And it's the one underneath, that was the second one. No. That says you want to see the bedroom, 4-bedroom confession.
Go through his file and see if there's anything else.
Never stopped Bernie.
All right. We got an email from Ellen Denoya saying a number of things about the article, suggesting that maybe it shouldn't be considered until next fall, saying that maybe it should be expanded to include a lot of different sites, saying that design shouldn't be a part of the zoning. And I actually wrote back and said that my view was that we should enable the one assisted living development that's been before us for the past couple of years, at Horse Place Stables, but that doing an article opening up the town to assisted living facilities at all sorts of different sites would be, before the master plan committee has any input whatsoever, would be the essence of poor planning. I said that there are lots of changes that can be made in this, but that, as I saw it, design had to be part of the zoning. And thus we created design review committee, because saying design is at the discretion of the planning board with no standards whatsoever, it becomes purely a matter of personal preference for the planning board as to what a building will look like. Yes.
Even if we did a design review committee, we would have to still put criteria in the zoning for them to...
Or in their chart.
Or in their chart.
It wouldn't have to necessarily be in the zoning. Without criteria, we have nothing.
Right.
And the developers, we come in and we say, oh, we don't like that. And they say, well, what just don't you like? They say, well, you say whatever comes to your mind, but if there's nothing in the zoning saying this is what you're supposed to produce, you've got nothing. You can't deny it on the basis of personal preferences that way. You need standards, you need design standards. Design standards are essential, in my view. But, I mean, there are a number of useful things that should be added to the zoning. And then today, Mr. Clark said that Mr. Salamondo has yet another new use for his construction yard.
He's selling it. I didn't say he had another use, I said he's selling it.
He's selling it for someone who wants to do assisted living there. And there's no stoplight there. They'd have to install a stoplight on Blue Hill Avenue, which would be a little tricky, I would think. Without having the neighborhood, I think we vetted the neighborhood at Horse Place Stables. We've insisted on public meetings before we submitted any zoning to change the zoning in their area. Without the neighborhood supporting Mike Salamondo's yard being turned into an assisted living facility, I simply won't support it. And I won't write zoning, and I won't participate in writing zoning to try and cause that to happen.
We just said, well, I didn't get it, sorry.
Mr. Salamondo has apparently entered into a contract to sell his construction yard. I don't know how big it is. I have no idea. I just know it's across from Curry College. It's on Blue Hill Avenue, a very busy street, and there's no stoplight. I'm saying that before I would rezone that property for assisted living, I would want to know that the neighborhood supports it, just the same way as I determined that the neighborhood supported the Horse Place Stable. Yes.
Are we being asked to rezone that property?
Yes.
Okay. By whom?
By,
That is not incorrect. Can I speak?
Yes.
First of all, I introduce myself. I'm Attorney Bob Sheffield. For the past 20 years, I've been an advocate of senior housing within the town of Milton. We are blessed to have Equity House. We have Winter Valley. We have Home Week. We have Fuller Village. I happen to be on the boards of both Home Week and Fuller Village. And I think it is a disgrace that in the town of Milton it is illegal to have an assisted living facility. I think that it's a disgrace to make a hospice illegal. I think that these uses should be allowed. I think that we've been thinking about this for years. I think it's past the time for thinking. I think there should be some discretion as where they're located. I think an appropriate point of discretion would be they should be located on state highway, which does not open up the neighborhood
the chairman that any proposal needs support of those living around it. And it will not happen unless it has that support. But I don't think that we should postpone zoning until the year 2025 because we have to have a resource book or we have to have a planning guide. I think assisted living is a reality today. I think that we put our heads together and we can come up with some reasonable zoning. And I think that this should not be illegal in the town of Milton any longer. That would be my opinion. Whether this is a perfect location, I think that we need to discuss that. Whether there should be a traffic, has to be a traffic light, I think is a ludicrous position. I think that for safety reasons, when we want to say that exiting the property, you have to take a right turn, we did that at Fall Village.
And turn around when you get to Mattapan if you're going the other way.
No, you turn around at the next traffic light. You could take a right and go I mean, it's the same as the Trailside Museum. You're not supposed to go across the traffic there. But that doesn't mean you can't be put in the Trailside Museum without 25 years of study. I think that the time has come that we should get along and do this, and maybe we'll learn a little bit in the process. And maybe everything won't be absolutely perfect. But just because we have standards in the bylaw doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be absolutely perfect. But that is where I'm coming from. I've been a town meeting member for 40-something years. I feel that it's time the town of Milton reaches a decision that these should not be illegal.
Well, in September, when this thing got kicked back to the planning board, that would have been the time to come up and say that, in fact, at that town meeting, it would have been the time for you to say what you just said to us. It's now 2 weeks before Christmas, and you want to write a new assisted living bylaw. And there's not enough time. Ellen says kick it over to the fall. I think that that may make us lose the development of workplace tables, and I don't want to do that. But I certainly don't want to open up the town for assisted living 2 weeks before Christmas without any sort of public input whatsoever.
Couple of questions. First of all, we've seen this. Is this yours now? Is this horse card? Or is this a new one? It doesn't say who it came from. I'm asking.
No, that's what went to town meeting.
That is what went to town meeting with the note, because it looks like there's been some changes to it, so I'm just double checking. There's some underlined edits. Okay.
No, that's the edits that were done as it lay out.
Okay, I never got the final copy right before town meeting, the edit shown. Okay, Bob Sheffield? Yes. How many changes would need to be made to this?
I think it should be I think there should be 3 major changes.
Okay.
One major change is it should not be site-specific.
Okay.
Another change is you should not look at the architect specific developer and say, this should be adopted.
Okay.
For example, it has to have an inside courtyard. Well, I think there needs to be some area for the residents to have the outside air.
Which is
and have the
exactly what the
amenities.
change was.
Right. We did take that out.
That
yeah.
change.
That change has been made.
And what's the third one?
And the third one is...
But, I'm sorry, site-specific, I mean, architectural plan specific, though, might be how many one-bedrooms and how many studios.
Yes, I think whether...
Not just the courtyard, right?
Right, and I think also whether it's 2 floors or 3 floors or single story, should not be in the zoning. There should be a height limitation. We already have height limitation for senior housing at, 40 feet?
why are we putting in 35 here? I think it should be more open so that we can meet the need that already exists in the community and has forced the community people to go out of town at a time in which they really do not want to. They're elderly, they're frail, they want to stay in Milton, they want to stay close to their friends, and there is not any place available because the planning board needs to make some changes before it's allowed. We're in the year 2012, it's time to act.
So that brings me to my next question, which is, if the planning board were to go forward with putting this onto the warrant, we have to have our public hearings prior to the warrant committee having their hearings, and then all of this, of course, goes to town meeting. My question is, are these changes ones that can be made during the planning board's public hearing process prior to going to town meeting, or are they so substantial that they would require a complete rewrite of the article, such that what's put before the Board of Selectmen on January 5th would be so rewritten as to be almost unrecognizable? That's why I'm trying to get to the extent of the changes.
I don't think it
here.
would be totally unrecognizable, but I think there would be substantive changes. I believe that what we need to do, it's now the beginning of December, it is we have to have a couple of sessions to bang around ideas, and this doesn't necessarily have to be made with the whole committee, and work out, some tentative language, some ideas. We have the placeholder for the selectmen by January 6th. 5th, okay. Maybe we'd hold a hearing before the submission of the actual wording. We go forward. We could push this off to October. I hope we don't have to push this off to October. I think we could go in May. And then after the warrant, before the warrant is published, you have to have the official hearing on the proposed zoning bylaw after it's published in the paper. And if there are any fine points to adjust at that point, we can go ahead and do it. But I believe we can make the May date without any problem. That's 6 months from now.
Okay. Ned, do you have any?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is obviously, this is new information for my client
Right.
to understand, but I think in general, there is some sense that a more generalized approach to the zoning is appropriate. They went through a lot of effort, time and effort to go through the hearing process that Alex alluded to vet the neighborhood and whatnot. So we want to be very careful to protect what they went through and in that process. I think it's very important that a zoning bylaw be before town meeting in May. That's sort of critical path from our perspective. I think the zoning, the hearing process as we go through it will vet significantly whether other potential sites have issues. And we'll hear loud and clear from neighbors in that process whether the Salamando site is appropriate or not, or whether other sites that might be characterized might be appropriate or not. At the end of the day, the zoning provides for a special permit process, which itself is subject to significant public hearing process. And if you haven't vetted a site before the zoning is approved, you're still going to have a substantial vetting of the site before you get to yes on a special permit. If there are issues, concerns that neighbors have, they're going to come out loud and clear, and I would expect that the planning board would have a hard time saying yes in that case. I think from a philosophical perspective, that's the more appropriate way to do zoning. But I do understand where the planning board comes from, where Alex comes from, where the town comes from, is that when you talk about changes to uses in this town, they're going to affect one or more neighborhoods.
and the general opening of zoning without really considering what the potential impacts are for specific neighborhoods is a very difficult thing to do today. When you're talking, even in a master plan setting, and you're talking about, well, it might be nice to do this here and this here and this here. At the end of the day, you're coming around to a process that's going to allow changes in use and changes in patterns that are going to have direct impact on abutting neighborhoods. And this town is very sensitive to how that works. And if those, a concern that I would have, given all of that, if there are issues and concerns that could be raised with respect to other potential locations, Salamondo being one, that could drag down the bylaw to the point where town meeting is going to vote no, because they're listening to one group of neighbors say, not in my neighborhood. And we don't get 2/3 to say yes to support zoning where the neighbors have already said yes for my client, then I would obviously have a significant concern. But given that concern aside, I think it's very important that whatever hearing process gets engaged in, that it gets very clear that it engages that level of discussion so that, at the end of the day, when town meeting votes yes or no, those issues have been carefully vetted.
And was the plan to resubmit the exact same article? Okay, so.
No, I've been somewhat overwhelmed on a number of fronts, not the least of which I had 2 other matters tonight. But my plan was to try and get at some modifications to this zoning to share with Alex and others before the 27th, and to have some revised version of this ready for consideration and recommendation by the planning board on the 27th. The 5th is a Saturday. I just checked.
Why did you tell me the 5th?
That's what they told me.
So they probably meant the 4th.
So the separate
It's
question.
usually the Friday, so.
Okay, well, the separate question is, whether, and I know that this board's first meeting would be the following week, so I understand that you have one more scheduled meeting before this has to be submitted. If this is an important enough issue, and we're working towards something that works for the parties, perhaps a brief meeting before the selectmen meet to accept and do the warrant, to do some final, understanding that the public hearing process is going to result in some level of further modification.
I don't have an issue with submitting something we know it's going to change as long as it's substantially complete. What I don't want is Article X, assisted living article, and that's it. So when I've seen that happen with other articles in the past before, I object to that. I don't object to, this is the best we could do by the 5th. We're going to change it over the next few weeks and do the public hearing process.
I think we're
Yeah.
working off of this
Yeah.
with some generalization and some other stuff, and I think that we can arrive at language that works. Again, my only concern is, does the opportunity to pass this bylaw in whatever final form it is affect my client's ability to get a yes vote out of town meeting, because we've stirred up 3 other hornet's nests, up and down Route 138 and/or Randolph Avenue. So that's a concern.
So then the reasonable course of action would seem to be that Ned gets to us what he has on the 27th. We decide whether or not we're going to put that on, and then start work after the new year at getting that refined. We may have to have some sessions before we do the public session.
Once it's filed, you can't change it around piecemeal. I'm not going to participate in this process. I'm happy to fix up what we've got for horseplay. I'm not going to start zoning these things throughout the town with on this is just the wrong way of doing zoning. It's 2 weeks before the zoning article is due, and there's been plenty of time before now for people to come in and make these arguments that it needs to be expanded town-wide. We don't have any standards whatsoever as to where these things should be located. We've got 2 weeks to produce these standards. I'm not going to have any part in this.
I was talking about
I
I was talking about Ned's article, so we've already, you would like the horseplay one. That's fine.
I'm happy
We
to work
agreed-
on horseplay.
We agreed at town meeting that we would accept this back and put it forward at a new town meeting, so that's what we should be doing. What I'm saying is some of what Bob Sheffield is coming out may come during the public hearings. I mean, people may bring that up. We will have to evaluate that as part of public hearings. What I'm saying is that Ned's language doesn't necessarily, you have to be absolutely perfect if you can't get it done over the Christmas
Well, I plan to
holidays.
come up with my own version of it also,
Okay.
so he
So
can
can
come
we
up with
delegate
one.
you and Ned to work
No, he
on
can
this?
come up with one and I can come up with one. And do you want to come up with one too, Paul?
No,
I
I
think
just want to
Paul's
make a
volunteering.
comment. Is there any special reason that this PUD that's already pretty much done, it's been, a tremendous amount of work's been put into it, that can't move forward, and then Mr. Sheffield could come in with a modification, and then if
Yes.
this takes to October, that's fine.
Yep.
But as Ned said, why try to put, you know, it would be a sad situation if there became some opposition to another site that affected a site that the neighbors are already, you know, happy with the plan, so,
It's a really good point, which is
Why
we've
can't we
already
separate
got Ned's clients going forward. He has a deadline. Your client presumably doesn't have a deadline because you were talking about October, at least it's not as tight.
We're talking
So-
about a town meeting that is 5.5 months from now. We can definitely,
Does Mr. Sheffield have a client? I didn't
I think-
understand that he...
Well,
Are you representing somebody?
good
yes, there is a client that is interested in buying 2 acres on Route 138 across from Carver College for the purposes of creating an assisted living facility.
I understood that, but I thought you were independent of that. I thought you were coming forward just as a
I
citizen.
have, a year ago and a year and a half ago, I was here before this very committee,
Yeah.
and I argued against site-specific locations, that we need assisted housing, we need it bad. It's a year and a half later, we need it worse now than we needed it then, and I'm committed to it. I do represent a client, but I was an advocate of this before I represented
No, that's
any
all my
client.
point is, I thought you were just basically a private advocate of it.
No,
before us tonight.
I'm also representing a client.
I think it's a fine way to go to amend the article, to get some neighborhood input. I personally think that 2 acres is far too small. I would say a minimum of 5 acres. But all this is water that doesn't have to cross the dam tonight. It seems to me that you've got a lot of work to do to convince anyone that a 2-acre site, that any 2-acre site on a state highway qualifies for these things, because to me, it's just awful. The prospect is just wrong.
My thought process on this was that, like, I think it's Mr. Sullivan said, can't this article go forward, a bylaw be created, and at a later time it be amended?
Amended
I
to,
mean,
right,
I thought-
exactly.
See, I thought that would suffice Mr. Sheffield, because I thought Mr. Sheffield was purely an advocate for assisted living, and I thought this would best get assisted living into Milton ASAP.
I agree with you. I think that Ned and I can come up with a site-specific article, which is not all entirely site-specific, but which is quite site-specific.
In effect, this will bring assisted living to Milton in stages, if you will.
Right.
Rather than, like you say, just open it up.
And it will
somewhat willy-nilly.
it'll give this committee a little time to give this issue some thought.
I mean, this can almost be, for lack of better terms, like a test case.
And we've done that before, in which we have put zoning into place and then modified it as new circumstances come along. So it's not like we don't have a precedent for doing that. And especially where we have a deadline for one party and not the same tight deadline for another, I think it makes a great deal of sense to do it this way.
Yeah.
Ned, what's the acreage of Horseplay?
It's more than 150,000 square feet.
It's 4.9 acres.
Thank you. Bob, what's the acreage on 138?
2 acres.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment about acreage in general. The acreage really should relate to the number of units, because you're looking at 5 acres. What if you have 20 units? If you have 100 units and you have 5 acres, that's a totally different density. So you should really, I think the zoning should look at density rather than acreage, as a general comment.
Yeah.
And as another general comment, I've come before you to speak about the assisted living article. We spoke about it on my work on the warrant committee most recently. But this is one of the things that I brought up consistently, was some of the items that Mr. Sheffield mentioned, which is about the specificity of the article, because what you're looking at now is 2 potential operators who have an interest. We don't know. I happen to know, because I've worked with Weston Associates for 10 or 12 years now, that they've been looking at for a site in Milton for some time. In fact, they submitted a response to the RFP for the town farm site and proposed assisted living there. So they've been looking for a site here. It's difficult, as we all know, to find a site that might work. And the timing of this is purely the result of their being able to secure an agreement for a particular site. Has nothing to do with the timing of the articles. And my work with Weston and my position about zoning in terms of it being too specific are 2 separate things. My hat as a citizen and as a warrant committee member relative to my opinion about zoning, and even when I ran for this board, was that our zoning should be more general in nature. So that's always been my position, because I don't think that we should be, as a board, in the position of picking and choosing winners of whoever gets to the site first, whoever gets their zoning passed first. I think our zoning should be representative of what the town sees as its goals and future. And if we do see assisted living, then let the private sector decide which sites fit into the zoning that's been approved, which is where these people are seeing a need before a master plan is done. So that one gets their agreement done before the other means that you've chosen one. It may be that the second one's a pretty good operator too, or a pretty good use for a site that's really not a very good use right now. That, I think we can all admit that that site storing construction equipment and materials is not the highest and best use of that site. So here's an opportunity for a use that people seem to want in the town on a site that could use redevelopment. It's an opportunity, apparently, that this site owner has looked at number of times unsuccessfully. So if this doesn't happen in some course of time, I don't know the details of the agreement, whether if it doesn't, something that can be considered for May, if it can wait till October, I don't know. That's something that we'd have to speak to Weston Associates about. But it may be that this is an opportunity that comes and goes, because the Weston Associates, I know, looks at not just Milton, but other communities and other sites, and they'll look for one which is going to work, which is going to have community support. So what we've discussed is we would talk with the planning board, we would talk with the neighbors, and see if there's some general support. If there's not, then they'll move on to a different location, and perhaps a different town.
Just out of curiosity, are you also representing the developer? What is your position here,
Well,
just for clarification?
My comments, as I said, were consistent for the last couple of years about the assisted living. I came tonight to see what the conversation was going to be, because I've been asked by Weston Associates to look at this site to see what would fit on this site, if a reasonable facility. And I've only been spending a short time on looking at that, so I'm actually, we're not sure that it actually, is a slam dunk, fit for the use on the site. But knowing the timing, that it's either now or you're looking at October, we decided to take a jump and see if this would work both from a physical point of view, which is the point that I look at in terms of the architecture, but from a support of the town and of the neighbors.
I don't see that there's anything inconsistent with moving forward with the zoning and horseplay, understanding that we still have a whole public process to go through before we get to town meeting. And that in the past, the recommendation as to what town meeting passes is not always the exact same as the article because of the tweaks to the article during that public process. So I think your questions remain open as to how it's done, but that it is clear, you know, we have been working for somebody for a while. We are, as Mike pointed out, introducing a new use to Milton. It's absolutely clear that we need to go forward with the May town meeting for what we're doing now, and then if there are tweaks that can be easily be made during that public process, fine. If not, if they have to be more substantial, then we can make those at the October meeting.
Meeting's over.
We're done. The electricity has spoken. So.
I think God is telling us something.
What is, without me trying to search, what is the required amount of land worth?
150,000 square feet.
Yeah, and near the traffic light, that's the other thing.
Can I ask Mr. Sullivan a question? Was there a house on Randolph Ave that the group that you represent was to purchase?
There's a house on the horse farm itself, and then they're purchasing a family duplex on that fronts on Randolph Ave that creates 75 feet of frontage for the.
Right.
Well, St. Elizabeth's is an assisted living facility, their rectory, under the 2 acre deal.
And the, well, that brings up another point. If it's 150,000 square feet,
if you reduce it,
4 acres.
if you reduce it to 2 acres, you open up.
Does anybody expect the public to come before us and ask us to lower it from 3 point something acres to 2 acres?
It's an important point that if we do lower the amount of acreage, we're going to have to do another search across the parcels and see what else would, in town, see what other sites would be applicable.
The point I'm getting at is if this article goes forward, it's like say public vetting, I think it's going to more or less focus on this article as it is.
Yes.
It's not going to bring into drastic changes like you commented, like.
But they would be able to recommend.
Yeah, but
changes.
to me, is maybe I'm off the mark, and Alex being a lawyer can tell me, I mean, the public process, I expect public representation. I don't expect corporate representation.
But there's still,
The newspaper will say this is for whatever it is, and people will say, oh, we don't care about that. We're not going to attend. If we attempted to turn this into assisted living everywhere on the state highway, then it would be different. I mean, well, we'd have to see what the people down at Temple Shalom would say about this. That's another site that would be
I think assisted living might be far more
well, I
profitable than
think
a
that
CVS.
maybe you're right, and maybe the master plan committee could study that, but just
I've added it to our list.
but just saying it doesn't make it true.
And I would actually like to agree with Mike on the public process, which is, and that's why I said, if there's anything major, it would have to go to October, because we can make small tweaks. You know, the article's gone in front. We can make small tweaks within the scope of the article. We can't change the scope of the article. So anything that was a large change would absolutely have to go to October. You can't just say, it's great that we've got this article, but we're going to cross all of this out and do something new. That's not within the public process.
Yes.
As a town meeting member who listened to the comments, and as a warrant committee member who listened to the comments when this was voted at the fall town meeting, the comments that came in had to do with the affordability, whether that would be addressed. I haven't heard that discussed tonight. And then about the specificity to the site and the design standards. So it seems to me that those are the 3 primary issues that were raised as concerns, and it seems to me that any revision to the language ought to address those 3.
And it will.
I can speak to some general research that I've done on the issue of affordability, because that is an issue that, one of the 2 issues that I heard at town meeting. And it's an interesting concept, because the issue of affordability in the assisted living context is really sort of apples and oranges. Assisted living and the notion of 80% of median income is how you define an assisted affordability, deals with income. And so how does that translate or transfer into an assisted living context where the people no longer have income? And so they have means and assets, but they don't necessarily have income. So how does that fit into a definition from a affordability perspective? What I've learned, and I went and visited the Stoughton facility that the Grailia Group owns, is that there are subsidy provisions out there, group adult foster care, which is an arrangement under an SSI program. There's a PACE program. There are subsidy programs that are available to provide assistance if you qualify on an income basis to help meet the costs of the assisted living facility. And for example, in Stoughton, I think that there are a certain number of slots that are allocated to PACE and what they call PACE Plus, so that we can talk about the context of allocating a certain number of units to be available for people who qualify for certain subsidy under these types of programs. I don't know how they won't specifically receive recognition for the town's purposes as affordable, but they will meet the goal, as I understand it from having talked to Deb Felton and Emmett Schmarzo after the hearing, that it would meet the goal of providing assisted living opportunities for people of lower income means. There's a means test and a subsidy qualification test. It's not a affordable income. So I did speak to Deb Felton, and at her suggestion I spoke to Emmett Schmarzo, who does work at the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. He couldn't answer my direct questions on how does it apply in the assisted living context, but he did promise to speak to some colleagues and get back to me, and we have not spoken again. So I think there's opportunity to define affordability using some measure. The question is how, and so one of the things that I would do as part of my effort to redraft and working with Alex would be to define that in a way that works appropriately. And because my clients have had experience with those, that's a for-profit entity. I know that there's affordable program out there under the Mass Housing Finance Plan, but that's for certain types of tax credit financing and certain types of large subsidy programs which don't relate to what's being proposed here. But they do have so many units available under this GAFC and the PACE programs that they're comfortable that that would be an appropriate way to provide affordability in this context.
Okay, so we'll have something on the 28th for you people. 27th. For your consideration, but it will be as I've made it very clear that amending zoning happens all the time. We did it 3 times with Central Avenue. If your ducks are in order, and I don't think you are, I think that 2 acres is too small any way you consider it. I would say that 5 acres was a good minimum.
I think we need to look at the materiality of their changes. If their changes are substantial.
Well, but no, but this would, no, I mean, it will be October. It will be October, but I'm simply saying that I think that you better look real hard at this 2-acre site because I don't think it's big enough. I think that it is, in fact, much too small. And I think that your point about density, if you're going to change the use of a site to apartments, assisted living, just because you don't have 100 doesn't mean that you haven't impacted the neighborhood. And I see no reason to go around changing the residential zones with little apartment houses here like they have in Quincy. I don't think it's a good zoning. That's my own feeling.
Well,
So-
hopefully, if we work together over the next
Right.
2 weeks, we can discuss this more intelligently on the 27th. Have something into the Board of Selectmen early January, and be able to move forward so that maybe we can resolve the problem at the May meeting rather than postpone it to whenever. Because I see if we approve something at the May meeting, then we'll say, oh, well, this is the test case. Let's see how this works out. And for the next 3 years, we'll be waiting to see how successful the site-specific zoning worked before we ever enlarge it to permit another facility here. And that is my fear.
Well then,
Well
looking
then.
forward to all the lawyers working together.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Well, I'll give a congratulations to your daughter from the
Planning board,
from
that's
the
right.
planning board.
I'm happy to play it, but you like No, I would embarrass.
Hold it up to the camera.
I would embarrass her.
Yes, it would.
I've already embarrassed her enough.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn? No, we don't.
Phil has stuff.
Hold the phone.
You forgot what you tell me is always the most important part, but I'll skip everything and get down to,
This is, for the viewing audience, this is the town planner's report, which we almost,
I was wondering.
I didn't see it on the agenda.
Thank God, it's not on there, we can't do it.
okay. I'll go quick and only because I want to get in the very last point. We have a MassWorks grant for $1 million. It's connecting Central Ave Business District with Milton Village.
Congratulations, by the
We
way.
have Green Communities. We're trying to do the final documents, and if the computer system ever comes back, we'll be able to get these up. The housing production plans in the Brush Hill Road 40B have taken crazy amounts of time. The neighborhood issues with DPW, the fire department, and the neighbors up at 683, 685 Brush Hill Road, but the roadway, the walls, whatever. Work Inc., that house is moving along very quickly. They expect to have occupancy March 15th. I've also worked with the park department to go over and talk with the folks at St. Pius for potential field usage by the park department in lieu of a pilot payment by the church. They have a 4-acre site that could be used for a soccer/lacrosse field. East Milton parking and access issues, they're moving right along. I'm now supposed to write an RFP for design engineering, which is our next step before we can get into construction. And the last but not least, for your information, which I just found out on the way in the door here, the old St. E's Rectory site will be becoming a hospice facility. The hospice facility is going to be going to the ZBA. The developer is a non-profit, so there is no site plan approval. But they are willing to take and make their presentation to this board, should you want them, on the 27th of December. Which is why I had to stop you for, do you want to hear their presentation?
Of course we want to hear them. Of course we want to hear
I mean,
them.
this is how it fits in with the stuff that you just went through. on
Right, exactly.
assisted
It
living.
will
But we
no
have no
longer be
jurisdiction.
available for assisted living. You're right, it eliminates that site entirely.
Exactly.
We have no jurisdiction though, is that correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
Good, that means I can come and listen to the hearing, or the presentation.
Yes.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to.
Mr. Duffy.
I'll just discuss the, when the meeting's over, I'll just discuss the social event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pretty late for a social event.
He's going to discuss it.
Okay, let's have a motion to adjourn. You're moving to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Tell us.